Book 4. Telemachus visits Menelaus in Sparta. When Telemachus and Pisistratus reached the Spartan plain and its surrounding hills, they went straight to splendid Menelaus' palace. They found him inside his house at a marriage feast he was providing for his many relatives, in honour of his noble son and daughter. He was sending her away to Neoptolemus, son of man-destroying Achilles. Back in Troy he had first promised he would offer her to him. He'd pledged his word, and now the gods were making sure the marriage would take place. He was seeing her off with chariots and horses for her journey to the famous city of the Myrmidons, whom her husband ruled. For his son, Menelaus was bringing Alector's daughter home to Sparta. That son, mighty Megapenthes, born to a slave, was his favourite, for the gods had granted Helen no more children after she had given birth to the lovely girl Hermione, as beautiful as golden Aphrodite. So they were feasting in the massive palace with its high-arched roof, neighbours and relatives of glorious Menelaus, all enjoying themselves. Among them was a singer, accompanying his godlike song by playing the lyre. As he began to sing, 2 tumblers ran and jumped here and there through the middle of the crowd. As the 2 visitors, heroic Telemachus and Nestor's noble son, stood at the palace gates with their 2 horses, Lord Eteoneus came out, a diligent attendant to splendid Menelaus. When he noticed them, he went back inside the house to tell the shepherd of his people what he'd seen. Standing close to Menelaus, he spoke to him. His words had wings. "Menelaus, raised by gods, there are 2 strangers here, 2 men who look as if they are descended from great Zeus. So tell me, if we should on their behalf take their fast horses out of harness, or send them off to find some other host who will welcome them as friends." These words he uttered really irritated fair-haired Menelaus, so he replied as follows. "Before today, Eteoneus, son of Boethous, you haven't been a fool, but now you talk just like a silly child. For both of us often feasted on the hospitality of other men before we got back here, hoping that Zeus would give us some relief from later suffering. So unhitch those horses the strangers brought and bring the men inside so they may dine." Menelaus finished. Then Eteoneus left, rushing from the hall and calling out to other diligent attendants to follow him. They took the sweating horses from the harness and hitched them in the stables, scattering wheat for them, mixed with white barley grains, leaned the chariot against the luminescent wall, and led the men into the godlike building. Telemachus and Pisistratus were amazed by what they noticed in the regal palace. For the high-roofed home of splendid Menelaus, a man raised by Zeus, shimmered in the light, as if illuminated by the sun or moon. When their eyes had gazed on it with great delight, they went in well-polished bathing tubs to wash. After women servants had given them a bath, rubbed them down with oil and helped them put on thick cloaks and tunics, they sat down on chairs right by Menelaus, son of Atreus. A serving woman carried in a lovely pitcher made of gold, containing water for them to rinse their hands. She poured it out into a silver basin so they could wash. Then beside them she pulled up a polished table. A valued female servant brought in bread and set it down before them, and added many tasty delicacies as well, taking freely from the food she had in store. A carver lifted platters with all sorts of meat, and served them, then set down in front of the 2 men goblets made of gold. Fair-haired Menelaus welcomed both of them and said, "Help yourselves, enjoy our food, and once you've had your meal we'll ask you who you are. For in you too your parents' breeding has not been destroyed, since you are from a royal human stock, from god-nurtured kings who wield a sceptre. Worthless men could not give birth to men like you." Menelaus spoke. Then with his own hands he picked up the roasted meat and set it down in front of them, the fat back cut of beef they'd placed in front of him, a mark of honour. So the 2 men helped themselves, eating the fine meal prepared and set before them. When they'd had their hearts content to food and drink, Telemachus leaned his head close to Nestor's son, so no one else could hear, and spoke to him. Son of Nestor, who brings my heart such joy, look at how throughout this echoing hall there's so much sparkling bronze and gold, electrum, silver, ivory. To me, it's the interior of Zeus's home on Mount Olympus, so much untold wealth. I'm amazed just looking at it. As he said this, fair-haired Menelaus heard his words and spoke to both of them. His words had wings. "Dear lads, no mortal man can really rival Zeus, since his possessions and his palaces endure forever. But among human beings someone else might challenge me, or not, about our wealth. I carried riches back inside my ships after we'd endured so much while we were wandering. We made it home. It took us more than 7 years. We'd roamed to Cyprus, Egypt, and Phoenicia. We even reached the Ethiopians, Sidonians and Erembi, Lydia too, where lambs are born with horns and ewes give birth 3 times in 1 full year. No master there nor any shepherd ever lacks sweet milk or cheese or meat, and through the entire year their flocks are ready to produce their milk. While I was wandering around these lands, gathering all sorts of goods, another man slaughtered my own brother unexpectedly, in secret, thanks to the duplicity of his murderous wife. So you can understand there is no joy for me in being king of these possessions. You may have heard this from your fathers, whoever they may be. I suffered many troubles and allowed a really well-established home, endowed with many noble riches, to collapse. I wish I could live with 1/3 my wealth here in my home, if those men could be safe, the ones who died in the wide land of Troy, far from horse-breeding Argos. And yet, although I often sit here in my house feeling sorry and in mourning for them all, sometimes groaning to relieve my spirit, and sometimes calling for an end to moaning, for one can quickly get too much of sorrow, still, for all my grieving, I do not lament all those men as much as I do one man, who, when I think of him, makes me despise both sleep and food. For of all Achaeans no one toiled as hard as did Odysseus, who took so much upon himself. For him it seems there would be no end of trouble, and I cannot forget to grieve for him. He's been away so long, and we don't know if he's alive or dead. Old man Laertes, I would think, is in mourning for him, and so is sensible Penelope, and Telemachus as well, whom he left a new-born child at home." Menelaus spoke. His words stirred a desire in Telemachus to lament his father. So from his eyelids he shed a tear onto the ground as he heard what Menelaus said about Odysseus. With both hands he pulled up the purple cloak to hide his eyes. Noticing this, Menelaus debated in his mind and heart. Should he allow Telemachus to speak about his father, or should he first question him and sound him out on each and every detail? As he thought of this, in his mind and heart, Helen came into the room, emerging from her fragrant, high-roofed chamber. She looked like golden-arrowed goddess Artemis. With her came Adreste, who set in place for her a finely crafted chair, and Alcippe carried in a soft wool rug. Philo brought a silver basket, which Helen had been given by Alcandre, wife to Polybus, who lived in Thebes in Egypt, where the most massive hoards of rich possessions lie in people's homes. He'd given Menelaus a pair of tripods, and 2 silver bathing tubs, as well as 10 gold talents. In addition, his wife presented Helen with some lovely gifts, a golden spinning staff and silver basket, with wheels underneath and rims of plated gold. The servant woman Philo brought this basket in and placed it by her side, filled with fine spun yarn. On it lay the spinning rod full of purple wool. Helen sat down on the chair, a stool beneath her feet. At once she started speaking to her husband, asking detailed questions. "Do we know, my divinely cherished Menelaus, who these men who've come into our home claim to be? Shall I speak up and pretend, or shall I tell the truth? My heart tells me I must be frank. I can't say I've ever seen someone who looks so much like someone else, whether man or woman. When I see it, I'm amazed. This man looks just like the son of brave Odysseus. I mean, Telemachus, whom he left at home a newborn child, when, because I'd acted so disgracefully, you Achaeans all marched off to Troy, your hearts intent on brutal war." Fair-haired Menelaus then said in reply, "This likeness you've just noticed, my dear wife, I've observed as well. His feet are similar, as are his hands, the glances from his eyes, his head, and his hair on top. And just now, as I was remembering Odysseus, discussing all the troubles he'd endured because of me, he let a bitter tear fall from his eyes, and raised the purple cloak across his eyelids." Then Pisistratus, Nestor's son, spoke out and said, "Menelaus, son of Atreus, Zeus-fostered leader of your people, this man here is indeed, as you have said, Odysseus' son. But he's a prudent man. In his heart he's too ashamed to come on his first visit here and put on a show with some assertive speech in front of you, whose voice we listen to with great delight as if it were a god's. I've been sent here by Gerenian horseman Nestor as his guide. He wants to see you and get your advice in word or deed. For with his father gone, a child has many troubles in his home, and there is no one there to help him. That's what's happened with Telemachus. His father's vanished, and there's no one else to protect his house from ruin." Fair-haired Menelaus then answered Pisistratus, saying, "Well now, this is strange indeed. To my home has come the offspring of a man I cherish, someone who, on my behalf, endured much hardship. If he'd returned, I thought I'd welcome him above all other Argives should far-seeing Zeus on Mount Olympus let the two of us make it home by sea in our swift ships. I would have given him an Argive city and built a home for him, where he could live, bringing him from Ithaca with all his wealth, his son, and his own people. I'd have emptied some neighbouring city in the region whose people all acknowledge me as king, so then we'd live here and could be together, and nothing would have separated us. We could have often entertained each other, getting joy from one another's company until death's black cloud came to embrace us. But God himself must have been envious to make that unlucky man the only one who didn't get back home." Menelaus finished. What he'd just said made them all feel like weeping. Argive Helen, daughter of Zeus, began to cry, as did Telemachus and Menelaus too, son of Atreus. Nestor's son could not keep the tears out of his eyes. In his heart he was remembering valiant Antilochus, killed by Dawn's courageous son. With him in mind, Pisistratus spoke. His words had wings. "Son of Atreus, old warrior Nestor used to say when we conversed together and your name was mentioned in our home, that as far as sound thinking was concerned, you were preeminent among all men. So, if it seems somehow appropriate, you should listen to me now. I don't enjoy weeping at dinner-time, and early dawn will soon be here. I don't think it shameful to cry for any mortal man who's died and met his fate. In fact, this ritual is the only ceremony we give for these unhappy men. We cut our hair and let the tears run down our cheeks. I have a brother who was killed. Not the worst man among the Argives. Perhaps you knew him. I never met him, never even saw him. But they say Antilochus surpassed all men in running fast and fighting well." Fair-haired Menelaus then answered Pisistratus, saying, "My friend, you have truly mentioned everything a right-thinking man might say or do, even someone older than yourself. The kind of father you were born from enables you to speak so sensibly. To recognize someone's inheritance is easy, when the son of Kronos spins good fortune's threads at marriage and at birth the way he now has done for Nestor, granting him for all his days continually to reach a ripe old age in his own home, with sons who are, in turn, intelligent and great spear fighters too. But we must stop and let that earlier weeping cease. Let's have water poured upon our hands, then once again turn our minds to dinner. In the morning there'll be stories for Telemachus and I to tell each other to our heart's content." He finished speaking. Then one of his attendants, diligent Asphalion, poured water on their hands, and they reached for the rich food spread out before them. Then Helen, Zeus's daughter, thought of something else. She quickly dropped into the wine they were enjoying, a drug which eased men's pains and irritations, making them forget their troubles. A drink of this, once mixed in with wine, would guarantee no man would let a tear fall on his cheek for one whole day, not even if his mother and his father died, or if, in his own presence, men armed with swords hacked down his brother or his son as he looked on. Zeus's daughter had effective healing potions, like that drug which she'd obtained from Polydamna, wife of Thon, who came from Egypt, where the fields so rich in grain produce the greatest crop of drugs, many of which, once mixed, are beneficial, and many poisonous. Every person there is a physician whose knowledge of these things surpasses that of every other human group, for through their ancestry they stem from Paeon. When Helen had stirred in the drug and told them to serve out the wine, she rejoined the conversation and spoke up once again. "Menelaus, son of Atreus, whom gods cherish, and you sons of noble men, since both good and bad are given by Zeus, sometimes to one man and at other times to someone else, for he is capable of all things, you should now sit in the hall and dine. After that, enjoy your stories. I'll tell you one I think is suitable. I will not speak of, nor could I recite everything about steadfast Odysseus, all the hardships he went through. But there's that time when you Achaeans were in such distress, and that strong man endured and did so much, right in the homeland of those Trojans too. With savage blows he beat up his own body, threw a ragged garment on his shoulders so he looked like a slave, and then sneaked in along the broad streets of that hostile city. He hid his own identity, pretending he was someone else, a beggar, something he'd never been among Achaean ships, and went inside the Trojan city. None of them suspected anything. I was the only one who recognized him in spite of his disguise. I questioned him, but his skill in deception made him evasive. Still, when I had bathed him, rubbed him with oil, and was helping him get dressed, once I'd sworn a mighty oath not to reveal among the Trojans that he was Odysseus until he'd reached the swift ships and the huts. He told me all about Achaean plans. Then his long sword slaughtered many Trojans, and he returned, bringing the Achaeans lots of information. Other Trojan women began to cry aloud, but I was glad. My heart by then had changed. It now desired to go back. I was sorry for that blindness Aphrodite brought, when she'd led me there, far from my own land, abandoning my child, my bridal room, and my own husband, too, who lacked nothing in good looks or wisdom. In reply to Helen, fair-haired Menelaus said, "Yes, indeed, dear wife, everything you've said is true. Before now I've come to understand the minds and plans of many warriors. I've roamed through many lands. But my eyes have never seen a man to match Odysseus. How I loved his steadfast heart! What about the things that forceful man endured and did in the wooden horse? Achaea's finest men, all of us, were sitting in it, carrying a lethal fate to Trojans. Then you came there, perhaps instructed by some god who wished to give great glory to the Trojans, and where you walked, noble Deiphobus followed too. 3 times you circled round, feeling that hollow trap. Your voice called out, naming the best warriors among Danaans, and you made it sound just like the voice of each man's Argive wife. Now I was there, sitting with Lord Odysseus in the middle, and with Tydeus' son. We heard you call. 2 of us, Diomedes and myself, were eager to get up and charge outside, or else to answer back from where we were inside the horse. But Odysseus stopped us. We were really keen, but he held us in check. Then all the other sons of the Achaeans kept their mouths shut, except for Anticlus, the only one still keen to cry aloud and answer you. But Odysseus clapped his hand firmly over Anticlus' mouth and held him, thus rescuing all the Achaeans. He kept his grip on Anticlus until Athene led you away. Then prudent Telemachus said in reply, "Menelaus, son of Atreus, cherished by Zeus, leader of your people, that incident is more painful still. It could not save him from a bitter death, not even if the heart inside him had been made of iron. But come, send us to bed, so sweet sleep can bring us joy once we lie down to rest." Once Telemachus spoke. Helen told her slaves to set up mattresses within the corridor and spread out lovely purple blankets over them with rugs on top, and over these some woolen cloaks. The women left the hall with torches in their hands and arranged the beds. A herald led the guests away. And so they slept there, in the palace vestibule, Prince Telemachus and Nestor's noble son. The son of Atreus slept in an inner room inside the high-roofed home, with long-robed Helen, goddess among women, lying there beside him. As soon as rose-fingered early dawn appeared, Menelaus, good at war shouts, got out of bed and put his clothes on, slinging a sharp sword around his shoulders. He laced up lovely sandals over his sleek feet. Then, looking like some god, he left his room. He sat beside Telemachus, and then addressed him, saying, "Prince Telemachus, what do you need that's brought you all this way on the sea's broad back to lovely Sparta? Is it a public or a private matter? Tell me about it, and be frank." Shrewd Telemachus then said in reply, "Menelaus, son of Atreus, cherished by Zeus and leader of your people, I've come to see if you could give me news about my father. My home's being eaten up, my rich estates destroyed. My house is full of enemies who keep on butchering flocks of sheep and shambling bent-horned cattle. They are suitors for my mother. Their pride makes them supremely arrogant. That's why I've now come to your knee to see if you perhaps can tell me of his mournful death, in case your own eyes witnessed it somewhere. Or else you found out from some other man the story of his wandering. For his mother delivered him into a life of sorrow more so than other men. And do not speak from pity, or give me words of consolation, but tell me truly how you chanced to see him. I'm begging you, if ever in word or deed my father, brave Odysseus, over there on Trojan soil where you Achaean men endured so much, made you a promise, and then kept his word, speak to me now, and give me the truth." Fair-haired Menelaus, very annoyed by what he'd heard, replied, "It's disgraceful how such wretched cowards want to lie in that brave warrior's bed as if a deer had lulled her newborn suckling fawns to sleep in a mighty lion's den, and then gone roaming through mountain fields and grassy valleys in search of forage. Then the lion comes back to his lair and brings to both of them a shameful death. That's how Odysseus will bring those suitors their disgraceful doom. Oh, Father Zeus, Athene and Apollo, how I wish Odysseus would come back and meet the suitors with the strength he had when he stood up in well-built Lesbos once in a wrestling match with Philomelides. With his great power he threw him down, and all Achaean men rejoiced. Those suitors would quickly find their bitter courtship end in a swift death. But these things you ask, what you've begged me about, I'll not digress to speak of other things, nor will I lie. No, what the old man of the sea told me, and did so truthfully, I'll not hide from you. I won't conceal a single word. In Egypt, though I was eager to get home, the gods prevented me. I had not offered them a full and proper sacrifice, and gods always demand obedience to their orders. Now, just in front of Egypt, there's an island, right in the crashing sea. It's called Pharos, as far offshore as a hollow ship can sail in one whole day when a fine stiff breeze blows up behind her. There's a harbour there with excellent moorage, and from that spot men launch well-balanced ships into the sea, once they have taken on supplies of water. For 20 days the gods detained me there. Not once was there a favourable wind, the sort of offshore breeze which makes men's ships race out across the broad back of the sea. Then my provisions would have all been spent, together with the spirit in my crew, if a goddess had not felt pity for me and rescued us, the goddess Eidothea, daughter of the old man of the sea, great Proteus. For I had moved her heart more so than other men. When she met me I was by myself, for I'd wandered off away from my companions, who'd gone out as they always did to scour the island, fishing with bent hooks, their stomachs cramped from hunger. She came up close to me and said, "Stranger, are you a slow-witted idiot, or are you happy just to let things go and find delight in your own suffering? You've been stranded so long on this island, unable to discover any sign of help, while your companions' spirits waste away." That's what she said. So then I answered her, "Whoever you may be among the gods, I'll tell you, I have not been pent up here with my consent. Something must have happened to make me act against immortal gods who occupy wide heaven. But tell me this, for gods know all things. Which immortal one keeps my feet shackled here and blocks my way? Tell me how I may find my way back home, how I sail across the fish-filled seas." I finished speaking. The lovely goddess immediately gave me her answer. "All right, stranger, I'll be truthful with you. The old man of the sea comes here from Egypt. I mean infallible, eternal Proteus, a god who knows the depths of every sea. Poseidon's servant, and, so people say, my father too, the one who sired me. Now, if somehow you could set an ambush and catch hold of him, he'd show you on your way. He'd chart the course for your return and map how you could sail across the fish-filled seas. And, Zeus-fostered man, if you were willing, he'd tell you all the good and evil things which have been taking place in your own house while you've been travelling away from home on such a long and arduous journey." When she told me this, I replied and said, "Could you yourself produce a strategy to ambush this divine old man in case he sees me first, and knowing all my plans escapes me? It's difficult for mortal men to overcome a god." Once I'd said this, the lovely goddess answered right away, "Stranger, I'll be frank, tell you the truth in everything. When the sun has made its way up into the middle of the heavens, that infallible old man of the sea emerges from the brine, where he's concealed by dark waves stirred up by the west wind's breath. Once he gets here, he lies down to rest in these hollow caves, and around him sleeps a herd of seals. They are the offspring of the lovely daughter of the sea, and swim up out of the grey water. Their breath gives off the sharp salt smell of the deep sea. At daybreak, I'll take you there and organize an ambush. You must carefully select 3 comrades, the best men in those well-decked ships of yours. Now, I'll describe for you all the sly tricks that old man has. First, he'll inspect the seals. He'll count them, numbering them off by 5s. Once he's looked them over, he'll lie down in their midst like a shepherd with his sheep. As soon as you see him stretched out to sleep, then you must use all your strength and courage to hold him there for all his desperate moves as he struggles to escape. For he'll attempt to change himself into all sorts of shapes of everything that crawls over the earth or into water or a sacred flame. You must not flinch. Keep up your grip on him. Make it even tighter. And finally, when he begins to speak and questions you in the same shape you saw him go to sleep, then, warrior king, you can relax your grip and let the old man go. Ask him which god is angry at you and how you'll get back, charting a course across the fish-filled seas." Saying this, she plunged into the crashing sea. I went to where my ships were on the beach, my dark heart thinking as I walked of many things. Once I'd reached the ships along the shore, we prepared and ate our evening meal. When immortal night arrived, we lay down beside the breaking surf. Then, as the streaks of rose-fingered early dawn appeared, I walked along the shores of that wide sea, praying in earnest to the gods. Then I took 3 comrades, the ones I trusted most in any enterprise. That sea goddess, who'd plunged into the bosom of the sea, brought up 4 sealskins from the ocean depths, each one freshly skinned, then set up the plot against her father. She scooped out in the sand some pits to hide in, and then waited there. Once we'd come up really close beside her, she made us lie down in a row and threw a sealskin over each of us. That ambush would have been too horrible to bear, for the atrocious stench of sea-born seals was dreadful. Who would let himself lie down with creatures from the sea? But Idothea personally helped us out by thinking up a useful remedy. She got ambrosia, sweet-smelling oil of the immortal gods, and put it under each man's nose. That killed the foul stink coming from those animals. With patient hearts we waited there all morning. Crowds of seals emerged and then lay down in rows along the seashore. At noon, the old man came up out of the water, discovered the plump seals, looked at each one and made his count, beginning first with us, whom he included with the animals. His heart did not suspect there was a trick. Then he lay down. We charged up with a shout and grabbed him in our arms. But the old man did not forget his skilful tricks. At first he turned himself into a hairy lion, and then into a serpent and a leopard, then a huge wild boar. He changed himself to flowing water and a towering tree. We didn't flinch, but kept our grip on him. Our hearts were resolute. When the old man, for all his devious skills, got tired out, he spoke up, asking me some questions. "Son of Atreus, which god helped your plan and produced a scheme so you could lie in wait and ambush me against my will, and why? What do you need?" When he'd said this to me, I answered him and said, "You know that, old man, so why mislead me with such questioning? I've been stranded too long on this island and can't discover any sign of help. The heart is growing faint inside me. So tell me, for you gods know everything, which one of the immortals chains my feet and blocks my way? And speak to me as well about my journey back, how I may sail across the fish-filled seas." When I'd said that, he answered me at once. "Before you left, you should have offered a fine sacrifice to Zeus and other gods so you could sail across the wine-dark sea and then arrive in your own land as fast as possible. Your fate decrees you will not see your friends or reach your homeland or your well-built house until you've gone back once again to Egypt, to the waters of that Zeus-fed river, and made holy sacrifices to the gods, the immortal ones who hold wide heaven. The gods will then give you that journey home which you so yearn for." As the old man spoke, my fond heart broke apart inside me, because he told me I must go once more across the misty seas on that long trip to Egypt, a painful journey. But still I answered him and spoke these words, "Old man, I will carry out what you have told me. But come now, tell me and speak truthfully. Did Achaeans in those ships get safely back? All those men Nestor and myself left there when we set out from Troy? Did any die a bitter death on board or in the arms of those who loved them after they'd tied up the loose threads of the war?" That's what I asked. And he gave me his answer right away. "Son of Atreus, why question me on this? You don't need to know or to read my mind. For once you've learned the details of all this, you'll not hold back your tears for very long. Many of those warriors were destroyed, and many men survived. Among Achaeans armed in bronze, only 2 leading warriors were killed on their way home. As for the fights, you were there yourself. There is one leader held back by the sea somewhere, but still alive. Ajax perished among his long-oared ships. At Gyrae, Poseidon first propelled his boat against huge rocks, then saved him from the sea. Although Athene hated him, he'd have been saved if he'd not grown insanely foolish. He stated he had managed to escape the sea's huge depths in spite of all the gods. Poseidon heard him make this boastful claim. Immediately those mighty hands of his picked up his trident and then brought it down on that rock at Gyrae, splitting it apart. One piece stayed in place. The other one sheared off and fell into the sea, the part where Ajax sat when his mind first became so utterly deluded. He fell down into the endless surging waves and died by swallowing salt water. But your brother escaped that fate. He and his hollow ship survived, for Queen Hera rescued him. And then, when he was just about to reach the steep height at Malea, storm winds caught him. As he groaned in distress, they carried him across the fish-filled seas to the remotest part of where Thyestes used to live, now the home of Thyestes' son Aegisthus. But then, once the gods had changed the wind's direction, it seemed that he could make it safely back. So he got home, and he was full of joy to set foot on his native land once more. He embraced the earth and kissed it, shedding numerous warm tears. He was so delighted at the sight. But a watchman spied him out, someone Aegisthus had set up as lookout to promote his plot, promising the man as his reward 2 gold talents. He'd been there on watch for 1 whole year just in case Agamemnon should succeed in getting back without being noticed and remind them all of his ferocious power. The watchman went straight to the palace to report the news to the shepherd of the people. So then Aegisthus came up with a treacherous plan. He picked out 20 men, the best there were in the whole state, and set an ambush. Then, in another section of the house, he had a feast made ready and went off with chariot and horses to escort Agamemnon, shepherd of his people, all the while intending to destroy him. Aegisthus then escorted him back home. He suspected nothing of the murder, and then, after the feast, he butchered him, just as one might slay an ox in its own stall. Of those companions of the son of Atreus who followed him, not one was left alive, nor were any of Aegisthus' comrades. They were all slaughtered in the palace. The old man finished speaking. My fond heart was shattered, and as I sat in the sand I wept. My spirit had no wish to live or gaze upon the light of day. But then, when I'd had my fill of rolling in the sand and weeping, the old man of the sea spoke frankly to me, saying, "Son of Atreus, you must not spend so much time like this in constant weeping. That's no help to us. You must strive as quickly as you can to get back to your native land. It may be you'll find Aegisthus is still living there, or else Orestes has preceded you and killed the man. If so, then there's a chance you'll get back for Aegisthus' funeral feast." The old man finished speaking. In my chest, my heart and spirit, for all my grieving, felt strong once more. So I answered him. My words had wings. "Now I understand what's happened to these men. But tell me about the third one, whether he still lives, held back by the wide sea, or has been killed. I wish to hear that, for all my sorrow." I spoke, and he at once replied, saying, "You mean Laertes' son from Ithaca. I saw him on an island. He was weeping in the palace of the nymph Calypso, who keeps him there by force. He has no way of getting back to his own land. He lacks companions and ships equipped with oars to carry him across the sea's broad back. As for you, Zeus-fostered Menelaus, it's not ordained that you will meet your fate and die in horse-rich Argos. No. The gods will send you off to the Elysian fields and to the outer limits of the earth, the place where fair-haired Rhadamanthus lives, and life for human beings is really easy. There's no snow or heavy storms or even rain, and Oceanus sends a steady breeze as west wind blows to keep men cool and fresh. Helen is your wife. That's why they'll do this, because they see you as the man who married Zeus's daughter." With these words the old man plunged back in the surging sea. I went to my ships and godlike shipmates. As I walked, my heart was darkly troubled, but once I'd reached my ships beside the sea and we'd prepared a meal, immortal night came down, and we slept there on the shore. As soon as rose-fingered early dawn appeared, we dragged our boats into the sacred sea, then fitted masts and sails on our trim ships. The men climbed in, went to their rowing seats, and sitting well in order, raised their oars and struck the grey salt sea. So I sailed back to Egypt's heaven-fed river once again, and there I offered a full sacrifice. Once I'd appeased the anger of those gods who live forever, I made a funeral mound for Agamemnon, to make sure his fame would never die, and when I finished that, I set off on my journey home. The gods gave me fair winds and brought me with all speed back to the native land I love. But come now, you must stay with me in my palace here 10 or 11 days, and after that I'll send you off with honour. I'll give you lovely gifts, a fine polished chariot and 3 horses too, and, as well as these, a gorgeous cup, so you can pour libations to eternal gods and remember me for all your days to come." Shrewd Telemachus then said to Menelaus in reply, "Son of Atreus, you must not hold me up for very long. To tell the truth, I'd like to stay right here, sitting in your palace, an entire year, and I'd not miss my parents or my home, for I get such astonishing delight from what you say and from your stories. But my companions are already restless back in sacred Pylos, and time has passed while you've detained me here. As for gifts, give me whatever you wish. Just let it be something you treasure. But I'll not take those horses back with me to Ithaca. I'll leave them here, to bring you pleasure. For you are king of an extensive plain in which huge quantities of lotus grow, with sedge, broad-eared white barley, wheat, and rye. But there are no wide plains in Ithaca, no meadows. It has grazing land for goats, something I prefer to lush horse pasture. No island sloping down into the sea has meadows fit for raising horses, and that's especially true of Ithaca." Then the great war-shouter Menelaus smiled, patted Telemachus with his hand, and said, "My lad, the way you've spoken out proclaims your noble blood. So I'll exchange those gifts. That I can do. Of all the things stored up here in my home, I'll give you the finest, the most expensive one. I'll offer you a beautifully crafted mixing bowl. It's all silver with rims of hammered gold. Hephaestus made it. Warrior Phaedimus, the Sidonians' king, presented it to me when I went there, and his home sheltered me. Now I'd like to give that mixing bowl to you." So these men kept conversing with each other. Meanwhile, back in Telemachus's Ithaca, the banqueters had reached the royal palace, driving sheep there and carrying strong wine. Their well-dressed wives were sending bread for them. As these men were in the hall preparing dinner, the suitors were outside Odysseus' palace, enjoying themselves by throwing spears and discus on level ground in front, with all the arrogance they usually displayed. Their two leaders, Antinous and handsome Eurymachus, were sitting there. Of all the suitors, they were by far the best. Then Noemon, Phronia's son, came up to Antinous to question him. He said, "Antinous, in our hearts, do we truly know or not when Telemachus will journey back from Sunday Pylos? He went away taking a ship of mine, which I now need to make the trip across to spacious Elis, where I have 12 mares and sturdy mules still sucking on the teat, not yet broken. I want to fetch and break in one of them." He finished. In their hearts the suitors were amazed. They had no idea Telemachus had gone to Pylos, land of Neleus, and still believed he was somewhere with the flocks on his estates or with the swineherd. So in answer to Noemon, Antinous, son of Eupeithes, spoke up. "Tell me the truth. When did he leave? What young men went with him? Did he take citizens of Ithaca, or were those men his slaves and servants? That's something he could do. And tell me this, I want the truth, so I know what happened. Did he take that black ship against your will, by force, or did you volunteer to give it up because he begged you to?" Noemon, son of Phronius, then answered Antinous, "I agreed to give it to him. Would anyone have acted otherwise when a man like him, with a grief-stricken heart, makes a request? It would be difficult to deny him what he asked. The young men, the ones who went with him, are excellent, except for us the best this land affords. As they embarked, I observed their leader, Mentor, or some god who looks just like him. I'm surprised at that. At dawn yesterday I saw Lord Mentor, though by that time he'd already gone on board for Pylos." Once he finished speaking, Noemon went away, back to his father's house. But those two suitors, Antinous and Eurymachus, had angry hearts. They quickly got the suitors to give up their games and had them sit down all together in a group. Antinous, Eupeithes' son, then spoke to them. He was annoyed, his black heart filled with rage, his flashing eyes a fiery blaze. "Here's trouble. In his overbearing way, Telemachus, with this voyage of his, has now achieved significant success, and we believed he'd never see it through. Against our will, this mere youngster has simply gone away, launching a ship and choosing our best men, the finest in the land. He'll soon begin creating problems for us. I hope Zeus will sap his strength before he comes of age and reaches full maturity. Come now. Give me a swift ship and 20 comrades so I can watch for him and set an ambush as he navigates his passage through the strait dividing Ithaca from rugged Samos, and bring this trip searching for his father to a dismal end." When Antinous had finished, all of them agreed, and they instructed him to carry out what he'd proposed. Then they got up and went back inside the palace of Odysseus. Now Penelope was not ignorant for long of what those suitors were scheming in their hearts, for the herald Medon told her. He'd been listening outside the hall as they were making plans inside, weaving their plot. He proceeded through the house to tell Penelope the news. As he came out, Just across the threshold, Penelope called him. "Herald, why have these noble suitors sent you out here? Are you supposed to tell the female household slaves of Lord Odysseus to stop their work and then make them a feast? After this whole courtship, I hope they never get together somewhere else. And today may they make the banquet in this house their latest and their last, all those of you who by gathering here consume so much the wealth of wise Telemachus. It seems when you were children all that time ago you didn't pay attention to your fathers as they talked about the kind of man Odysseus was among their generation. In Ithaca he never did or said a hurtful thing to anyone, unlike the usual habits of our godlike kings, who hate one man and love another one. He never did the slightest injury to any man. But your heart and wicked acts are plain to see. You show no gratitude for kindness shown to you in earlier days." Then Medon, an intelligent man, said to her, "My queen, I wish that what you've just described were the worst of it. But now these suitors are planning something much more dangerous and troubling. I hope the son of Cronos never permits them to succeed. They mean to kill Telemachus with their sharp swords as he comes home. He sailed off to Pylos and then to sacred Sparta, seeking news about his father." As Medon spoke, Penelope felt her heart and knees give way where she was standing. For some time she couldn't speak a word to him. Both her eyes were full of tears, and she'd lost her voice. But finally she spoke to him and said, "Herald, why did my son leave? There was no need for him to go on board swift-moving ships, men's saltwater horses, to sail across enormous seas. Did he do it to make sure he'd never leave a name among all men?" Wise Medon then answered Penelope and said, "I don't know if some god was urging him, or if his own heart prompted him to sail for Pylos to learn about his father, whether he was coming home again or had met his fate." After saying this, Medon went away, down through Odysseus' home. A cloud of heart-destroying grief fell on Penelope. She lacked the strength to sit down on a chair, and there were many in the room. She collapsed, crouching on the threshold of that splendid room, moaning in distress. Around her, all her servants cried out too, all those inside the house, young and old. Still weeping with that group, Penelope spoke out. "Friends, listen, for Zeus has given me more sorrows than any other woman born and raised with me. Some time ago I lost my noble husband, a man who had a lion's heart and qualities which made him stand out among Danaans in all sorts of ways, a courageous man, whose famous name is known far and wide throughout all Greece and Middle Argos. And now, without a word, storm winds sweep my son, whom I so love, away from home, and I don't even hear about his journey. You are too cruel. In your minds not one of you thought to rouse me from my bed, although you knew deep in your hearts the moment he embarked in his black, hollow ship. If I had known he was going to undertake this journey, he would have stayed here. He really would, for all his eagerness to make the trip, or else I would have perished in these rooms before he left me. But now one of you must quickly summon old man Dolius, my servant, whom my father gave to me before I ever came to Ithaca, the one who tends my orchard full of trees, so he may go as quickly as he can to sit beside Laertes and tell him all these things. Perhaps Laertes then, in his mind, can somehow weave a plan, then go and weep his case before those men intent on wiping out his family, the race of heavenly Odysseus." The good nurse, Euryclea, answered Penelope, "Dear lady, you may kill me with a sword or keep me in the house, but I'll not hide a word from you, for I knew all this. I gave him everything he asked for, bread and sweet wine too. He made me swear a mighty oath I would not tell you, not until he'd been away 11 days, or you yourself should miss him and find out he'd left, in case you harmed your lovely skin with weeping. But you should have a bath, put clean clothing on your body, then go. Take your servants to your room upstairs, and make your prayers there to Athene, daughter of great Zeus, who bears the aegis. She may rescue him from death. Don't bother that old man with still more troubles. I don't think the race of Archesius is so completely hated by the gods that one of them cannot still somehow protect this high-roofed home and its estates so rich and far away." Eurycleia spoke. What she said eased the sorrow in Penelope, whose eyes stopped weeping. She went to bathe herself, put fresh clothing on her body, and went away, taking her female servants to her room upstairs. She placed some grains of barley in a basket, and then prayed to Athene. "O untiring child of aegis-bearing Zeus, hear my prayer. If resourceful Odysseus in his home ever burned a sacrifice to you, plump cattle thighs or sheep, recall that now, I pray. Save my dear son and guard him well from those suitors and their murderous pride." With these words, Penelope raised a sacred cry, and the goddess heard her prayer. But the suitors were still carousing in those shadowy halls. One overbearing youth might say something like this: "A queen with many suitors is really getting ready for the marriage, knowing nothing of the preparations for the killing of her son." That's the sort of thing any one of them would say, in his ignorance of how things would finally end. Then Antinous addressed them all and said, "Noble lords, you must not speak out so intemperately. No more talk like that. Someone may report it, especially to those inside the house. Come now, let's get up quietly and work to carry out that plan which all our hearts responded to with such delight." After saying this, Antinous picked out his men, 20 of the best. They went down to the shore and dragged a swift black ship into deep water. They set the mast in place, carried sails on board, and fitted oars into their leather rowing loops, all in due order, then spread the white sail out. Their proud attendants brought up weapons for them. They moored the ship quite near the shore, then disembarked and ate a meal there, waiting until evening fell. Wise Penelope lay there in her upstairs room, taking no food. She wouldn't eat or drink, worrying if her fine son could avoid being killed, or if those arrogant suitors would slaughter him. Just as a lion grows tense, overcome with fear when encircled by a crowd of crafty hunters, that's how her mind was working then, as sweet sleep came over her. Then she lay back and got some rest, and all her limbs relaxed. But then Athene, goddess with the glittering eyes, thought of something else. She made a phantom shape exactly like a woman, Iphthime, daughter of the brave Icarius and wife to Eumelus, who lived in Pherai. Athene sent this shape to Lord Odysseus' home while Penelope was in distress and grieving, to tell her she should end her tears and sorrow. The phantom passed through the thong which held the bolt and went into Penelope's room. Standing there above her head, it spoke to her, saying, "Penelope, is your heart anxious as you lie asleep? It shouldn't be. The gods who live at ease will not bring you distress and suffering. Your son will still get home, for he's someone who's never been offensive to the gods." Wise Penelope remained in her sweet sleep beside the gate of dreams. But she replied and said, "Sister, why have you come here? Up to now you haven't visited, your home so far away. You tell me to end my cries and suffering, all the pains which grieve my mind and heart. But I've already lost my noble husband, that lion-hearted man whose qualities made him preeminent among Danaans in all sorts of ways, a courageous warrior, whose fame is widely known throughout wide Greece and Middle Argos. And now the son I love has set off in a hollow ship, poor child, with no idea of how men struggle on or conduct themselves in meetings. That's why I grieve for him much more than for my husband. He makes me tremble. I am so afraid he'll encounter troubles with those people in the land he's visiting, or out at sea. Many enemies are now devising schemes to hurt him in their eagerness to kill him before he gets back to his native land." The dim phantom then answered Penelope, "Be brave And do not let your mind and heart succumb to fear too much. He has with him the sort of guide whom other men have prayed to stand beside them. And she has power, yes, Pallas Athene. While you've been grieving, she's taken pity on you. She's the one who sent me here to tell you this." Wise Penelope then spoke out in reply. "If you're indeed a god, and have listened to that goddess when she speaks, then tell me news of that ill-fated man. I'm begging you. Is Odysseus still alive and looking at the sunlight? Or is he dead, already down in Hades' home?" The faint image then answered Penelope and said, "No, no, I cannot talk of him in any detail and tell you whether he's alive or dead. It's a bad thing to chatter like the wind." Once it said this, the phantom slipped away, through the door bolt, out into a breath of wind. The daughter of Icarius woke from her sleep, her heart encouraged that so clear a dream had raced towards her in the dead of night. The suitors then embarked and sailed away on their trip across the water, minds fully bent on slaughtering Telemachus. Out at sea, halfway between Ithaca and rugged Samos, there's the rocky island Asteris. It's small, but ships can moor there in a place with openings in both directions. The Achaeans waited there and set their ambush for Telemachus.